Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. I've been a bus rider for many years. From my vantage point, taking the bus should be easy. Convenient might be a stretch, but it definitely shouldn't be hard to do. A city runs best when all of its residents are able to get from point A to point B with as little difficulty as possible. WeGo, our city's bus system, seems to agree. This past weekend, WeGo rolled out some bus route and change schedules. They do this twice a year, and there's a lot of number crunching that goes into each change. Here to break down the most recent updates is WPLN's Special Projects Editor and our fill-in producer, Tony Gonzalez. Tony, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, Khalil. Good to see you.
Yes, sir. So, starting over the weekend, some bus riders suddenly had new routes and schedules to get used to. This wasn't a major overhaul, but what sort of things changed?
Yeah, so there were a few types of changes. For one, there were 7 bus routes that got slightly sort of changed what streets they're using. This is not major. They're not changing where those buses start or end their trips, but they might move over a few streets here and there. 18 other bus routes got schedule adjustments. There was also an expansion for what's known as WeGo Link. So this is when you can use Uber to get to your bus stop, like if you kind of need to make that initial connection. So that only is available in certain areas in the city, but they expanded that. So there's now 5 bus routes where you can take an Uber for just $2 to get to your initial bus stop. They also expanded access on demand. These are the smaller buses that you might see on the streets. You can schedule those for a pickup. It's really helpful for people who use wheelchairs especially. They extended the hours for the access ride to midnight on weekdays. So if there's sort of a later night activity, now there's a little bit easier way to get that access service. So those are some of the types of changes that they just rolled out.
Can you put this into perspective a little bit? Like, what will bus riders actually notice?
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme, these are pretty small adjustments. I mean, there wasn't like a lot of news coverage of them or, not a lot of public discussion or anything like that. But if you're on one of these couple dozen routes, you're going to want to look at the new schedule book. You can look at that online or you can pick up the printout at the bus station. But when WeGo makes these kinds of changes, they are also going to watch really closely for the next few weeks about how they're working. Did they move a bus stop and now suddenly there's some confusion or something like that? Are the buses running on time? Are they doing better or worse than they used to do? I actually got to go behind the scenes earlier this week to see how they do this. I bet with Dan Freudberg, he's the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for WeGo. So in his office, he has like a triple computer monitor kind of set up so he can watch all these buses in real time and how they're doing.
Okay.
There were probably 100 little bus logos on the map on the screen, kind of inching along. They're also color coded, so they show whether the buses are early, on time, or running late.
So our vehicle positions update about every 15 seconds with their current locations. So, for example, looking at this particular vehicle, we can see that they're about 3 minutes behind schedule, which for us in terms of customer experience, that's good. We don't want to be ahead of schedule because somebody could miss their vehicle. But if we're just a couple of minutes late, then the vehicle's there more or less when people are expecting it.
So in this case, you have 2 buses that are maybe going to arrive at the bus stop almost one after another. What can you do about that?
You could ask the bus in front to just wait for an extra minute or two, something that's not too disruptive to the passengers that are already on board. Something else that we're looking at being able to do is use something called transit signal priority, where the bus can actually send a request to the traffic signal to, for example, hold the green light for an extra few seconds to allow the bus to get through.
So Freudberg, he said he's been with WeGo about 12 years, and a lot of this type of data is new since he's joined in that time. Mm-hmm. The old method was analog, to say the least. I mean, they would literally have bus supervisors, either riding the bus or going out and watching, kind of like pen and paper, to see whether the buses were running on time. Now they've got kind of the high-tech thing going on.
That's a good thing. I mean, I could imagine someone trying to log the buses during a rainy day. It's got to be
fun.
pretty tough. So they can watch the buses in real time. What does that mean for bus riders?
Well, so day to day, I mean, it means that they have the chance to make little adjustments to try to make the bus run on time, right? So, I mean, when I was watching along with them, there were 12 buses along Gallatin Pike, and they could see which ones were ahead or behind schedule, and they can try to make those adjustments in real time. I think the bigger thing, they can then add up all of this data, day after day, week after week, to try to do some analysis. So each month, WeGo says they collect 500,000 bits of data. So that's like every time the bus is making it to a stop and moving along. So they can crunch that into charts and analyze it. And Freudberg, he told me that all of that can go into their routes and to figuring out their schedules.
And they can look at things like not just what it takes on a typical day, but also how long does it take on some of the worst days. We have all this new information that we just didn't have access to before. How do we make sense of it all? And saying, okay, well, we've got, 20 terabytes of information from this system here on our network. What do we do with it?
So it's pretty clear that, WeGo can still do more with all of this information, but they are trying to use it day to day. It also sends, better data into like travel apps like Google Maps. There's another app called Transit. A lot of bus riders use that one because it shows exactly where their bus is and like how close it is to getting to their stop. So there is more they can do, but they're starting to kind of get into the big data kind of setup.
So, you've been reporting on this for several years. Is it fair to say this is a little bit of a passion for you?
Yeah, I'm into it. I like figuring out what's going on the streets out there. Trying to just figure out, why is the bus on time one day or late another time? Yeah, I'm into it.
WeGo, a lot has changed over the past few years since you've been covering this. Can you walk us through a little bit of WeGo's timeline?
Yeah, I mean, just as a reporter here, I think, the big thing people think about back in 2018, that's when there was this mass transit referendum. This was like huge proposal. It would have raised some taxes in order to put more money into bus service. And also it would have created 5 light rail train lines. But that was defeated. I mean, voters, they rejected that referendum by a pretty wide margin. And one of the things in 2018, one of the main critiques at that point was a lot of people, they were saying, let's not do light rail and some of these other ideas yet. Can we just figure out how to run a better bus service first? So that was one of the messages that I think a lot of people were saying at that point. So people have had this desire, for better bus service, more buses, more frequent buses. They've made that pretty clear over the years. I mean, people have also filled out like surveys and there've been focus groups and all this other planning. So in 2018, I think the message was, let's improve the bus service.
So since the failed referendum, has WeGo been able to make moves on creating a better bus service?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, there was actually an additional setback then in 2019. So WeGo actually had to cut back instead of adding more bus service. They actually had to cut back. There just wasn't enough funding that year, so they actually eliminated some bus routes. People were not very happy about that. They also increased the cost of a fare at that point. But at the same time, I think one of the things that people didn't really know was kind of going on behind the scenes was they had this project called the Better Bus analysis or Better Bus Initiative. They were using some of this data we talked about and really trying to figure out where's the high ridership, what kind of hours make the most sense, where's the demand. So around that time, they started trying to kind of roll out this data. And the bigger idea was just to give bus riders what they were asking for, which was more frequent bus service and also longer hours, meaning like, once you get late enough at night, there's no bus anymore. Mm-hmm. They've been trying to extend those bus hours later into the night.
Then the pandemic hits. That couldn't have helped.
Right. Yeah. So they're doing what they can with the data. Then there's the pandemic that, really, that just slashed the transit ridership. I think WeGo is back now to, 80% of the bus ridership that they had before COVID hit. They've also essentially built back all of their hours. They've actually added slightly more hours than what they had before. They've also been adding a lot of sheltered bus stops. That's something that's been kind of going on year to year. I think they've added something like 100 bus shelter. It used to be like a bench, or just a sign. And now they've got these shelters at, I think, like 100 more bus stops. So they've been, working on all of that in the background.
All right, so we kicked off with the most recent changes, and now we've got a better grasp of how we got here. So what comes next for WeGo?
Yeah, so some of these changes they just did are relatively small. I think in the spring we might see some bigger changes. They are thinking about adding more of those late night bus trips. So they're proposing buses running until 1:15 a.m. Monday through Saturday. So a little bit beyond midnight on some of the major routes. They're still working on some new transit centers, which are sort of like bigger bus stations in neighborhoods. I was also told WeGo is going to work on a new study of their bus rider demographics to know who's riding the bus and sort of what they want. Most of their data on that is at least 5 years old. So, when you're running a bus system, I guess it never really ends. The work does not end. They're just constantly kind of tweaking the network, and I think we'll see some more changes come in the spring.
If you take that bus, you'll get there. That's our fill-in producer and WPLN editor, Tony Gonzalez. Tony, thanks again for this breakdown.
Yeah, thanks, Khalil.
All right, we've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about Nashville's bus system. How has WeGo rebounded from the pandemic? What's worked and what hasn't? Do you ride Nashville buses? Tweet us about your experiences at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. But first, please enjoy this Busta Rhymes track. You know the one. Do the bus a bus.
Fight the dust, you like the fuss, look right at us. I know you like the cuss, who can you trust to bring the rush? The bus a bus, come on, just keep it moving. The bus a bus, oh yeah, I like it, what you doing? The bus a bus, rockin' to the beat. Hey, yeah, all in together now. The bus a bus, oh come on, keep it moving. The bus a bus, oh yeah, I like this, what you doing? The bus a bus, rockin' to the beat. Hey, yeah, all in together now. The bus a bus, yeah, keep moving. The bus a bus, oh yeah, I like what you doing? The bus a bus, rockin' to the beat. Hey, yo. The bus a bus, yeah, come on, keep moving. The bus a bus, yeah, I like what you doing. The bus a bus, rockin' to the beat. Hey, yo, all in together now.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. Voters sent a strong message to city leaders back in 2018 when they rejected a sprawling mass transit proposal. That message: fix the system we've got before dreaming so big. WeGo set to work, but then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. That slowed everything down, including the overhaul on our current bus system. It all but crushed ridership. But this year, ridership has rebounded by 80%. My next guest has been with WeGo through all of the above, and he joins me now, Trey Walker, WeGo Chief Development Officer. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, my friend. So, all right, I know you work at WeGo, but I have to know this. Do you ride the bus?
I do. So I live, fortunate to live in the Wedgwood, Houston neighborhood, so really close to downtown. And along Nolensville Pike and along many of our major corridors, we have really frequent bus service. And so I enjoy when I'm working downtown all day and have that commute trip, take that on the bus. I just walk right off my back, out my back door, walk down Hart Street, catch the bus at 2nd and Hart in downtown, easy as can be. On the trip home, the stop's even closer because I'm on the 4th Avenue side. So I just hop right off at Rains Avenue and I'm home. Okay,
I need you to be completely honest. Are you pleased with the service?
On major corridors during our peak hours, service is convenient, service is fast. And the areas where we're looking to improve are how do we provide that frequency that makes those easy connections. You know, the trip I just described to you is a very direct trip. It's from a couple miles out of downtown to downtown. How do we expand those connections to where that 1 hour timeline of travel can expand to larger parts of the county? And those are the areas where we're looking to focus. All right. Service improvements.
As I mentioned, the pandemic crushed ridership, but help us understand just how bad was the impact of the pandemic on our bus system?
Yeah. So initially, March 2020, we all know what happened, and the world kind of came to a stop. But WeGo Public Transit was identified as an essential service for the city. And we kept running. We never shut down. We limited some hours, limited some trips. We wanted to protect our employees just like everybody else did. And with that, we saw a lot of discretionary trips, folks that work downtown, school students certainly, and a lot of, people that are riding for those discretionary trips, like I was just describing, if I'm going to an event or something for my house, that stopped. So we went down to about 50% of our ridership, all told, and about 40% even in April of 2020. Since about the spring and fall of 2021, as things started coming back together, and we started actually adding service back in the fall of 2021 and improving our service levels, we have seen a drastic rebound. And when we add service back, we're doing that primarily we've added that service on our main corridors. So right now, service on Dickerson Pike, for example, has about a 12-minute service cycle on the corridor, 12-minute frequency. That's half of what it was pre-pandemic. So we've been able to reallocate our resources that were maybe for commuter patterns that aren't quite within Davidson County, that aren't quite the same. Maybe some local routes that were serving, kind of in neighborhoods and doing long circulator trips. We were able to focus that on our main corridors, and we saw a really quicker response in our ridership along those corridors. So right now, present day, on Saturdays and Sundays, we're above pre-pandemic levels.
Okay.
And on weekdays, we're at about 85% of pre-pandemic levels. So we've been able to make those frequency improvements. And if you're on a main corridor in Nashville, bus service today, particularly during those peak hours, late at night, service tapers off a little bit, but particularly during those peak hours, service is more frequent than it was 3 years ago. So, I encourage everybody to take a look at, the transit app and our schedules and see, are there some convenience trips that were there that maybe you weren't relying on transit to provide that option beforehand.
You gave us a little bit of an example, but what was going into the thinking of how WeGo worked to rebound from the hit caused by the pandemic?
So a lot of it was kind of the market of the pandemic. We knew we wanted to space people out. We didn't want overcrowding on our buses. We wanted to provide safe trips. We wanted to take care of our employees. And so when we start looking at putting service back on corridors, we deployed a method of having buses stationed throughout the county so that if an operator saw some crowding taking place on their bus, they could place a call on a main corridor, and we would have buses stationed to be able to insert an additional bus to help that overcrowding issues. So that was some of the initial steps that we took. And as we continued that, we saw service trends come back and service come back on the main corridors. So those essential trips, the folks that never stopped riding transit, the grocery store clerks, the hospital attendants, things of that nature that never left public transit, they continued to ride. And then we continued as we added frequency to those main corridors, seeing ridership rebound faster on those corridors, which also helped, with any sort of overcrowding potential and things of that nature.
Earlier in the show, our fill-in producer, Tony Gonzalez, talked about the multi-year effort to try to add more frequent buses and longer hours. Let's get into that. How would you compare where things stood just before the pandemic versus today?
Yeah. I'll use the example of our frequent transit network. And so those are, like I said, the main corridors in Nashville: Murfreesboro Pike, Gallatin Pike, Dickerson Pike, Nolensville, Charlotte, the West End corridor, Hillsboro, the Franklin Pike corridor. We've added frequency to all of those corridors and can look to continue to do that in our next step of service changes. So some things that we have conceptually lined up for our spring service changes are an expansion of our service hours. So right now we have buses running to 12:15 at night on those major corridors. We're looking to expand that to 1:15 in the morning. We're looking at improved frequencies midday on the Route 7 and Route 8. One trend that we've seen in the pandemic that I haven't touched on yet is that we see flatter peaks. So not necessarily those huge commuter peaks, but actually a spread out peak all day. So we're seeing higher ridership midday when you're comparing it to that 3 to 6 window in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And so adding that frequency for those people making trips midday is something that we're looking to fill in on. And then also expanding span and frequency on our crosstown routes. So now that we've got the backbones right, and we've got the corridors with substantial service along those corridors, how can we help people connect between those corridors that doesn't necessitate that downtown trip? And our efforts with transit centers, we opened our transit center, our Hillsboro Transit Center in March of this year, and we're nearing groundbreaking for our North Nashville Transit Center in about a month. Hillsborough has 2 routes that connect to it, so you can connect to those 2 neighborhoods. The 2 areas that fall on those routes. Our North Nashville Transit Center will connect 5 present-day routes, and we hope to expand that with the future crosstown connection on Trinity Lane as well.
Now I'd like to bring in a bus rider. Beth Sims has been making the commute from Spring Hill to Vanderbilt for 15 years. That's a long time. Beth, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing well.
So good to have you with us. So tell me, how did you become a bus rider?
Well, basically because I live so far away. I live in Columbia, but I work at Vanderbilt University at the School of Nursing, and it's just convenient. It's free for all Vanderbilt employees. We just have to swipe our ID badge, and it just saves a lot of money and wear and tear on my vehicle.
Now give me the skinny on your commute. What would it be like if you were driving to work every day?
Oh, goodness. Fighting that traffic with the increase in people moving to our area could just be a nightmare. This way, I can sit back in a nice, big Greyhound type bus and do whatever I want to, read or whatever, and let someone else do the driving.
Fortunately, you were able to find an alternative through the Regional Transit Authority's van pool service. Tell me, how does that service work?
Well, I did that in the beginning before the pandemic, and a group of commuters will get together, contact the Regional Transit Authority, and we will rent a van from them. And they also give us a gas card as part of that. We all, whoever rides the van, split the cost of that every month. But the downside to that is it's not free, and everyone has to share in doing the driving.
That could be difficult to schedule, huh?
Yes, definitely.
Now tell me, how did the pandemic really affect your life as a bus rider?
Well, it sent me home for 18 months. We all had to work remotely, so there was no commute because we just all worked from home.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil A. Colonna. We're talking this hour about our bus system and how it's rebounding from the pandemic. Trey Walker from WeGo is still with us. We got a tweet at This is Nashville from a user, woo_10. Please ask Trey what they are doing, what we are doing, to prevent bus bunching. It's extremely bad on Murfreesboro Pike. Sometimes there will be periods of 30 minutes where no bus comes, and then 3 buses come within 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult scenario. As we're talking about commuting patterns and how we've seen our roadways get more busy as we've come in maybe the last year or so. So when we're monitoring our on-time performance, we were in the mid 90s, and as an agency, we're looking to be in the upper 80s. Looking at that schedule predictability, we were up in the mid 90s when the roads were clear. Right, you can run an easier service when there's not as much competition out there. Not as many vehicles in the same lane space. Over the last 6 months or so, we've seen that drop back into that upper 80s range, and one of the side effects of that is that bus bunching. And I think to the segment earlier regarding some of our technological solutions and how we manage our headways and that spacing between buses, and shifting from more of a schedule-based model to an active-based model, particularly when we're looking at service as frequent as 10 minutes on Murfreesboro Pike and potentially going more frequent than that. It really becomes more important to know, okay, my bus is coming in 6 minutes as it is, I've got to be at the bus at 12:35. So it's definitely a challenge right now as the roadways are becoming more congested, and something we're looking to deploy within pilot programs so we can take countywide, as we referenced in the previous segment on Charlotte Pike.
All right, so Steve Bland, WeGo CEO, said that he wants bus service to be so dependable that people can throw away the bus schedule and know that if they walk up and go to a bus stop, a bus will soon arrive to pick them up. It's quite an ambitious idea. Can the city make it to that level of service?
It's ambitious, and it's something that I personally witness when I'm riding the 52 near my house. I don't need to worry about that. And that frequency, having that frequency it's freedom to your trip. I can tell you that, because if something happens, if you're a couple minutes late out the door and then you got to wait 20, 30 minutes, I mean, that can really hurt your commute, hurt your ability to get around. But we have improved that. We actually have some across a lot of areas within the county, within our frequent transit network. We have that for parts of the day. And I think our next steps are looking to expand that and looking to expand that and improve those connections to those routes that do run less frequent, those routes that are, local circulators in those crosstowns.
I want to get back to Beth Sims. Beth, simple question. Are you happy with your decision to switch to the regional bus service?
Oh, most definitely. We've become the same people ride almost every day, and we've become our own little community. It's great because it's free for us, for Vanderbilt and state employees, and it's a no-brainer for me.
How much of a difference does it make that, these costs are covered and that it's free for you?
Well, it's extending the life of my car. I don't have to pay for parking on campus, and it also cuts down on my stress.
Are you recruiting others to start riding the bus or joining a service like yours?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Anybody wants to ride the 95 bus from Spring Hill to Vanderbilt in downtown Nashville, we would love to have you.
More people to join the community. Now, Trey, what about people who don't necessarily need to use WeGo on a daily basis to get back and forth to work or running errands? What is WeGo doing to court more bus riders?
Yeah, so what we have, this last summer, we had a promotional program called WeGocations. We had several venues across town that we partnered with. And we were working with promoting our new fare collection system, which is called Quick Ticket. And we partnered with those venues, and if you showed your Quick Ticket card, you got half off your admission, whether it be the zoo or the Frist, or some of our other partners. And so what I think promotions like that do is it enables people to start thinking, okay, can I make that trip to the Frist? Can I make that a transit trip if I live, in Bellevue? And start thinking through that, consulting our schedule, seeing that, there is some convenient service there. There is improved frequency, and start inching out. I know it can be intimidating taking that first bus ride and thinking, okay, do I have the right payment method? Do I have the right time? Am I staying at the stop on the right side of the street? So it can be intimidating, but becoming approachable and making folks know that it's easy and creating good partnerships for where trips can be made, starting looking at those discretionary trips is a good entry point for most folks. And I encourage people to do that.
Are you all working on discretionary trips for events like Titans or Predators games as well?
We do, yeah. So we have our Game Day Express that we run along the Music City Star Line, or the WeGo Star Line, excuse me. And as far as service to Predators games, a lot of our service kind of terminates downtown, right? And so a lot of those routes can be utilized for service to those events and concerts in the area as well.
What else can we look out for from WeGo?
I want to note a little bit about our transit center development. Like I said, we're breaking ground in North Nashville here in the next couple months. Excited to see that project come online. And really the service, that having a facility that, has bus service occasionally isn't that great, but I'm really excited about the amount of service we're going to be able to put in there and the connections that we're going to be able to make in that neighborhood and across town as we put some of our crosstown trips into that station as well. So that'll be coming up at the corner of 26th and Clarksville starting in the next couple months. And as what was mentioned earlier, we're really moving a lot in our partnerships with the Nashville Department of Transportation on bus stop improvements. We've improved about 35 stops within the last 14 months alone, and have another 35 to 40 in the works. And a lot of those are in concert with pedestrian safety initiatives with Nashville Department of Transportation. On the 12th Avenue Bikeway project that's taking place on our Route 17, we have about 14 stops that are being improved as part of that project. We're going to come alongside NDOT and provide solar lighting and shelter and bus stop amenities. But all that's improving that pedestrian environment, once again, making it less intimidating to get to our pikes where we have frequent service that can move people conveniently.
All right, we got another tweet at This Is Nashville from Twitter user Tommy Line Weaver. Quote, I've studied the Netherlands. Most towns and cities are designed around buses, trains, biking, and walking. In the U.S., everything is car-centered. How do we fix it? Government overrides the voters? Trey, this is a really big question. So what are your thoughts? Any thoughts for Nashville?
So Nashville is laid out. It is. It was a dense local area as it developed, but also did kind of evolve, kind of that mid-century car-centric environment. So we kind of have tight right-of-ways, and as we start to emerge from downtown environments, really sprawling areas. And so it's a difficult combination for our transit service. And so it's how do we keep things predictable? How do we have space to be able to operate, to have lines that are focused on those corridors? And then how do we have that reliability when we start getting out of town? Because if you get bogged up downtown, you don't have that reliability out of it. And so how do we have that reliability and those station accommodations in the more suburban parts of our county and our region that people can hop on and feel safe?
Trey Walker is the Chief Development Officer at WeGo. He was joined by Beth Sims, Spring Hill resident and longtime bus rider. I want to thank you both for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We have to take a short break. When we come back, we'll invite a few more experienced bus riders into the conversation to get their thoughts on the WeGo updates and what they'd like to see change in the future. Are you a regular or occasional user of mass transit? What would you like to see from WeGo? Tweet us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. I've lived in cities where cars are the predominant mode of transportation, so I tried that for a while. But honestly, the stress of traffic and bad drivers became too much. For me, it was no way to start the day or end it. So I take the bus. While it's not hassle-free, I found it a lot more pleasant. And if you're like me and grew up riding the bus, you know it's kind of a rite of passage, a measure of freedom and responsibility to get to where you need to be and be safe while traveling. Experienced bus riders have a deep knowledge of not only the city streets, but the needs of people who rely on mass transit to live their lives. My next guest can relate. John Bull is a longtime rider who arguably knows Nashville's bus system better than anyone. John, welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you here with us. So you took the bus here today, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, why do you ride?
It's a couple of things. One, I don't harass my fellow drivers when I am driving, which is good for their blood pressure, and I won't run over any pedestrians. And also, getting a senior discount, $33, $36 a month using the quick ticket is, as they say, a good deal.
No road rage and pedestrian safety and a discount. It sounds like fantastic reasons to take the bus. Tell me, what type of trips are you taking?
We'll take today. 5:35 in the morning. Took a bus, Southern Hills Hospital on 52 inbound to Coleman Recreation Center. That's 15 minutes. Ran for an hour. Beautiful sunrise, magnificent sunrise. Came back and prepped to come here, and I left at 10:30. Arrived here as scheduled. Changing at the main bus station and arrived here at 11:45, exactly when I was programmed to be here, and that's typical. One thing, 52 is one of those main trunk routes, and I always check on my netbook when the next bus will be there, and it's accurate within 4 minutes. And I walk 3 minutes to the bus stop, and we're good to go. That's typical of what I usually do in the morning.
All right, the fact that you were up at 4:30 and ran miles and saw the sunrise before I woke up makes me feel pretty guilty. I'm going to have to get on it a little bit. You're an inspiration, sir. Now, you're also an avid rider, and you're also a pretty engaged rider. If you were a hazard to guests, how many WeGo board meetings have you think you've been to over the years?
started after people decided they did not want to fund rail. My take on it. Ever since then, I had been to all the WeGo board meetings without exception until COVID raised its head. Mm-hmm. And I would make a public comment, some suggestions, some ideas. What is now Route 75, I think my input had a lot to do with that. And I think some of my input at the WeGo meetings to extend the hours, that was also that was some input. It's I think it's a positive thing to have input to the board. It's so they know what the riders think and feel.
Yes, sir.
One of the positives, and this is not a slam on WeGo, I'm holding up a $2 bill, is Metro needs to properly fund the mass transit system. We've had a half century, in my opinion, of inadequate funding, and that's something that needs to be addressed. That's something that needs to be addressed.
All right. I want to bring in my next guest. Another bus rider, Lisa Kim, is a senior at Hume Fogg High School and is a member of WeGo's Public Transit Youth Action Team. Lisa, thanks for being here. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure to have you with us. So tell me, how often are you riding the bus?
So I've been riding the bus since middle school, specifically since 7th grade. And I would always ride the bus after school to my mom's workplace. So my parents work near Vanderbilt and they don't have the time to like pick me up after school and bring me back home or anything like that. So since middle school, my sisters and I have been riding the bus to my parents' workplace like nearly every single day, like 5 days every school day.
Now, take me back to 7th grade. Do you remember your first experience riding the bus?
Yes, I was slightly scared, but luckily I was doing with friends, so I could depend on them. But one embarrassing thing is that I didn't know I was supposed to like pull the silver cord to indicate that I wanted to stop.
Okay.
So I almost missed my bus stop, but luckily I caught it on time and I was able to get off at the right stop.
I'll tell you this. Forgetting to pull the cord is a lot better than sleeping past your stop, which I have done.
Oh, I've done that too.
Yeah.
I've done that too.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Now, like, how helpful was it to have like your family and friends teach you the ins and outs of public transportation?
Oh, super helpful, because I feel like one of the main reasons why kids and students in general, or just people in general, feel a bit uncomfortable to ride the bus is just getting through that first bus ride. But because I had my sisters tell me and my like parents like being there for me, like for example, like in 8th grade, I had to ride 2 buses to get to my middle school. And my mom, she actually rode the bus with me like before school started, and we went through the route together. And so that was extremely helpful. So it's definitely important to have like a community around you. And I would say like for your first bus ride, it would be super helpful if you had like a friend to go with, whether you're going to like the mall or the movies.
So now you are educating your peers about mass transit as a part of WeGo's Public Transit Youth Action Team. Tell me, what is that? What's the action team trying to do?
Yeah, so to give you guys some background information, we're a team of 8 high school students from across Nashville, and we really work to advocate public transportation use, specifically amongst the youth. So we like to focus on middle schoolers and underclassmen in high school, since we felt like that's typically the age group where, you don't have your license yet, you don't have a permit or access to a car. So we really depend on public transit. So we like to focus on promoting the use of Stride, which is a program where you get your school ID, but it also doubles as a free bus pass. So a lot of students don't know this, but you can use your school ID to scan and ride the bus for free. Mm-hmm. And in the past, what we've done is we've created surveys to figure out, like, why are some kids hesitant to ride the bus? And from these surveys, we've learned that number one thing, kids just don't know how to ride the bus. Like that's not something that every school, every middle school, high school teaches people. So like at Hume Fog, riding the bus is so common that even during orientation, we have like a quick segment of how to ride the bus. So we want to work towards getting into contact with middle schoolers, especially this year since we're more in person, and get in contact with middle schoolers and go to their orientations or go to their like after school programs and teach kids how to ride the bus. And another thing we've gained from those surveys is that we've learned that a lot of kids' parents are actually extremely worried for the kids' safety. And I feel like major reason is because there's just a lot of negative stereotypes about the bus, whether it's the cleanliness of the bus or the safety around it. So we try to combat that by posting social media posts where we break down stereotypes and also try to explain how to ride the bus. And we've even gone over the better bus plan, like breaking that down to allow the youth as an audience to learn more about, the lack of funding that we have and some improvements that we'd like to make. So, we've collected surveys. We like to post social media. We've also even created a YouTube video last year, which was super fun, where we got to actually get on one of the WeGo buses and film a video on specifically how to ride the bus and which apps to use to like plan out your bus routes and all that stuff. So.
Awesome. Yeah. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Akolona. We're talking this hour about Nashville's bus system. I want to bring in another bus rider. Stacey Irvin is a photographer from East Nashville who lives with multiple sclerosis. She's used Access Ride to schedule trips. She actually recorded her first trip for a previous episode of ours that aired in July, but this is her first time as a guest. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. So, I understand you've not scheduled rides lately on Access. Why is that?
I've had more family in town, and so they are able to transport me, and also just dealing with kind of heat intolerance through the summer, spending a little less time getting out and about, but I love utilizing Access Ride when I don't have someone to take me somewhere, or if I want to save a friend a trip and I can meet them, wherever we're going. It's been so convenient, and I drive like a little motorized chair, and, to just leave my front door and drive up my driveway and onto the platform, and they raise me up and lock me into place with the belt so my chair is secure and I am. It's just great. The drivers are really friendly and helpful. So it's a wonderful service.
So I would fair to say that you plan on continuing to use the Access service, huh?
I do. Yeah. As long as I can. And I'm hopefully getting a even fancier power chair that it'll be too heavy for friends to fold up and put in the car. The one I have now is about 60 pounds, and it's easy for friends to take me if I'm not using Access Ride. But if I get a little more comfortable chair in the future, I don't have my own van for that, which I may get at some point. But Access Ride definitely will be key for a heavier chair.
Now, Access Ride is helping you out a lot, and I'm glad it's working. But tell me, what would you like to see change?
Well, I have to say probably the ticket system. I would love to see that kind of upgraded, because right now, the price is amazingly affordable. It's $3.70 one way. But you can buy these little Access Ride tickets, and you have to order them. You can't order them online anymore. You have to call and place your order. And then if they mail it to you, they charge $5 now, which is pretty steep for just small paper things. And then not all of the vehicles take those tickets. So if you're in a different vehicle, you have to have exact change. Or if you are in a Access Ride shuttle that has the little kiosk thing, they can give you change, but in the form of a ticket that has like maybe 30 cents or whatever the change was. And it's just complicated. So I have like little ticket stubs with change on it. I have a bag of quarters and dimes and nickels. And, you know, I'm trying to always have exact change. And then if I want to avoid the $5 mailing fee, someone will have to go down to the main terminal to pick up the tickets, and they're going to have to figure out a place to park, you know, to get it. So for someone who can't drive themselves and would have to rely on, you know, I think, you know, it'd be nice to have an app I could buy, you know, they could scan on my phone, or, you know, just kind of bring it up to date.
To make the payment options and ticketing process a lot more easier and a lot more streamlined for you. So, you know, John Bull is still with us. You are a master bus rider. I'd like to hear, you know, what changes from WeGo have you noticed that have really been helpful?
Well, the big deal is the main line I always take to get out from a place. 52 is running much more often and much later, and I'm looking forward in the spring when the last bus will leave downtown, the central station at 1:15. I'm looking forward to that. The crosstown routes, they are not completely running as late, or for that matter, on the same day as the trunk lines. For example, 77, which goes by the magnificent soccer stadium at the fairgrounds. 77 goes right down through the front entrance, but it's not running on Sunday where they play a lot of the games. And that's when the crosstown connectors get up to the same frequency and extension as the trunk lines. Those are the two things. And of course, the using Uber to get to the bus stop is a good deal.
Give me the one change. I've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to get to Lisa really quick. Give me the one change you would like to see WeGo make, the top priority for you. To fund fully the Uber ride to the bus stops in the zones. Now, Lisa, you've been riding the bus for years. You've been educating your peers on how to ride the bus. Tell me, what are some changes you would like to see from WeGo as far as making the mass transit system experience better for everyone?
In addition to just like increasing frequency of buses, I would like to also like address like if certain bus stops don't really have like sidewalks that make them accessible to get to. And I feel like that's a really big issue, because if it's not safe to walk to a bus stop, then it's difficult to get there and to ride the bus. So that, in addition with having more transit areas where people can wait for their buses, because sometimes whether it's due to weather or something like that, they're just the benches, there's not enough benches to fit everyone. So I would say, you know, focusing on sidewalks and safer bus stop areas.
Okay, so I have this question. I'd like each of you to respond, either agree or disagree. In all the cities I've lived in during the holiday season for about 2 weeks, all mass transit is free. John, do you agree with that idea?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Stacey, how about you?
Yes.
All right, so there we have it, the poll of expert bus riders and this one humble host's opinion, possibly WeGo can present some free bus rides during the holiday season for everyone. I want to thank all of my guests for being with us. Master bus rider John Bull. He was joined by Hume Fogg Senior Lisa Kim and photographer and East Nashville resident Stacey Irvin. Thanks to you all for being here, and I'll see you all on the bus. We're going to go out today on the bus song by artist Jay Som. We want to thank everyone who tuned in this hour. Tomorrow, we'll learn about area churches that are fully embracing new members of the LGBTQ community. We'll check out the service of the queer church. This is Nashville is a production of WPLN News and Nashville Public Radio. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Our producers are Steve Harouche, Rose Gilbert, and Tony Gonzalez. Our digital lead is Anna Gallegos-Cannon. Michaela Elias is our technical director. Our executive producer is Andrea Tudhope. Shout out to our intern, Tori Hoover. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. The conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Instagram and let us know what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil A. Colonna. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. And be good to each other.
I'll see